When the day began, people on Earth were living their normal lives. Some were getting ready for work, some were eating breakfast with their families, and others were simply enjoying a calm morning. No one had the slightest idea that the world was about to change forever. It happened so suddenly that most people later said they didn't even understand what they were seeing at first. It felt like a normal day, but in a few minutes, everything would feel heavier, quieter, and more frightening. It started when every screen on Earth flickered. Phones, televisions, giant billboards, even small screens inside shops and buses. Everything went dark for a moment. At first, people thought it was a global glitch or maybe a worldwide test. Some joked about it, others ignored it. But then the screens all came back on, showing the exact same image. It wasn't a logo, a warning, or any familiar signal. It was a live feed of a distant human outpost in space. The outpost was a small colony built on the surface of a rocky moon. Humans had created it only a few years earlier, and although not many lived there, the place was important. It represented Earth's hope for peaceful cooperation with other civilizations. People on Earth had seen pictures of the outpost before, but never like this. The video quality was too sharp, too close, as if someone or something wanted to make sure the entire planet witnessed every detail. At first, Earth's citizens were confused. Some wondered if it was a documentary or some emergency update from space agencies. But within seconds, confusion turned into fear. Something was wrong. The outpost looked damaged. Smoke was rising from the ground, alarms flashing in the background. People could be seen running, though the image was far away enough that their faces weren't clear. It was obvious they were scared, and it was obvious something terrible was happening. Around the world, families gathered around screens. Workers stopped what they were doing. Students froze mid-sentence. Even diplomats in government buildings stared in silence, waiting to understand what they were witnessing. Soon, no one spoke. No one moved. They could only watch. Earth's global communication center received thousands of calls within seconds. Was the footage real? Who was broadcasting it? Why was it shown on every screen at once, without permission? Security teams hurried into command rooms, trying to regain control of the networks. But whatever had taken over the global systems was stronger than anything Earth had seen before. No hacking attempt in Earth's history had ever reached this level. A few seconds later, the feed zoomed out, revealing the source of the broadcast. A group of unfamiliar ships hovered above the outpost. They looked sharp, dark, and unlike any ship Earth had cataloged. It became clear that this broadcast wasn't a message from Earth's agencies. It wasn't a technical error. It was a deliberate transmission from an outside force. Earth had met several alien societies before, most of them peaceful. Some were curious, others cautious, but none had ever shown direct hostility. That was why, when these unknown ships appeared on everyone's screen, it took people a moment to believe what they were seeing. There had been warnings from scientists that not every civilization in the galaxy would be friendly. But those warnings never felt real until now. As people continued watching, a strange stillness spread across Earth. Even busy cities grew quiet. Cars stopped in the streets. Shops stopped working. Schools went silent. The footage felt heavy, like the entire planet was holding its breath. Nobody knew how far away the outpost was from Earth, but everyone understood one thing immediately. They couldn't help the people there. They were too far. Humanity could only witness. Inside Earth's government command center, the highest leaders gathered. They were surrounded by scientists, analysts, and communication officers. No one had answers yet. They studied the ships on the screen, trying to match them with known star systems, trying to decode the symbols painted along their sides. But nothing matched. These were strangers, complete strangers, and they had chosen to introduce themselves in the worst way. Earth space agencies. tried to reach the outpost through private channels, hoping the broadcast was only showing outdated footage. They called again and again, but received no reply. The silence on the line felt heavier than anything else. It confirmed what everyone feared: the outpost was in real danger. People across Earth began recording the screen with their phones, as if they needed to keep proof of what they saw. Some cried quietly. Some stood frozen. Others whispered prayers. Many simply sat down wherever they were, unable to look away. The world felt smaller, more fragile, more unprepared. Then something unexpected happened. The broadcast froze. For a moment, the image didn't move. People whispered that maybe the signal had been cut off. Maybe Earth finally regained control. But the still frame was replaced by a set of symbols. They weren't letters or numbers, at least none recognized by humans. They glowed in a cold metallic light, arranged in patterns that looked intentional, almost like a message. Experts rushed to analyze the symbols. Linguists, mathematicians, and code specialists all tried to make sense of them. The symbols repeated themselves 3 times, as if the sender wanted to make sure everyone understood. But no matter how hard the experts tried, they couldn't decode the meaning instantly. It was too unfamiliar, too alien. As the world stared at the symbols, the feed suddenly switched back to the outpost view. But now, the scene was different. The camera angle had changed. The ground looked more damaged than before. The smoke was thicker. People couldn't see any movement from the outpost structures. The broadcast was silent, but the silence itself felt like a message. A news anchor in one of Earth's major cities slowly removed her earpiece. She looked into the camera, unable to read the script in front of her. The teleprompter had stopped working, and the studio lights flickered around her. She took a deep breath and said the words that many were already thinking. "This isn't a mistake. Someone is showing this to us on purpose." Her voice shook slightly, and viewers across the world felt the same fear. Every space observatory on Earth began scanning the sky, searching for signs of the unknown ships. Satellites were repositioned. Emergency communication systems were activated. Every major nation coordinated with each other, something that had not happened with this level of unity in decades. It was one of those moments when humanity finally looked beyond borders and saw itself as one group, united by the same fear. Back in the command center, technicians tried to shut down the broadcast, but nothing worked. The signal was coming from a source so powerful that Earth's entire communication grid had been hijacked effortlessly. This realization scared the experts more than the actual footage. If someone could take control of Earth's systems so easily, what else could they do? A calm but serious voice spoke in the command room. If they can do this, they can do anything. No one disagreed. Finally, after several long minutes that felt like hours, the broadcast ended. Screens everywhere slowly returned to their original state. Programs resumed. Advertisements reappeared. Music started playing again. But the world no longer felt the same. The silence after the transmission ended was almost as disturbing as the broadcast itself. Earth had just witnessed something it never expected. Not just an attack, but a message. A message sent directly to every human being. A message too powerful to ignore. For the first time in a very long time, humanity felt fragile. But that fear quickly transformed into something else, something sharper, something more determined. People looked at each other differently. Governments sat in emergency meetings. Scientists began gathering every piece of data they could find. The world had changed, and no one doubted it anymore. The broadcast would later be called the Silent Hour, not because of what was shown, but because of how the world reacted. An entire planet watching in complete stillness. Little did anyone know, this was only the beginning. And Earth's reaction would shake the galaxy. The hours after the broadcast felt unreal for everyone on Earth. People kept checking their screens again and again, hoping the transmission would return with some kind of explanation, or maybe a correction that everything had been a misunderstanding. But nothing happened. The feed was gone, and only the memory of it remained, sitting heavily in everyone's chest, inside Earth's main government building. The situation was completely different from the silent confusion spreading among ordinary citizens. The place was filled with hurried footsteps, urgent whispers, and tense faces. Security officers guided leaders and advisors into a large circular room, where the United Earth Assembly held emergency meetings when something serious happened. But even the oldest members admitted they had never seen a crisis like this one. Normally, people would argue about politics, budgets, or policies, but today, no one wasted time on disagreements. The broadcast had shaken everyone in the same way. When they sat down, the room was quiet except for the soft hum of machines. The meeting began with a simple question: what do we know? The answer was almost nothing. Analysts explained that the signal came from far beyond Earth's known communication range. The hijacking had not come through any familiar route. It wasn't sent from a satellite or a relay. It had simply appeared, as if whoever sent it had technology far ahead of anything humans understood. The leaders listened closely, their faces serious. No one interrupted. Even those who were usually impatient felt the weight of every word. Specialists then showed paused shots of the unknown ships. They zoomed in to examine the designs, markings, and shapes. Some parts looked like armor, others like energy panels. But there was no clear sign that matched any records Earth had. The symbols that appeared later in the broadcast were also reviewed again and again, but no one could decode them. Not yet. One advisor finally spoke, breaking the silence in the room. This wasn't an accident. Someone wanted us to see this. The statement felt heavy and final. Everyone knew it was true, but hearing it spoken out loud made the reality sink even deeper. Someone had chosen Earth as an audience. A calm voice from across the table added, and they didn't hide anything. They showed the damage clearly. They wanted to show dominance. Another leader leaned back in her chair, looking tired but focused. We need confirmation about the outpost. We need to know what happened there for real. Earth's communication center kept trying private channels, using every backup system available. They tried long-distance radio, laser transmission, narrowband pulses, everything that had ever worked in remote situations. But the outpost never replied. The silence felt worse than any message they could have received. Slowly, the truth became harder to deny. Something had gone terribly wrong there. The leaders knew that the world outside this room was watching them. Citizens were scared. News stations were filled with experts trying to guess what had happened. Social platforms were overflowing with theories, panic, and confusion. People needed answers. They needed direction. And the assembly knew they had to speak to the world soon. But before they could, they had to decide one thing. How should humanity respond? One of the senior officials stood up. He walked slowly to the center of the room and spoke firmly. We have always tried to make peace our first choice. But today we must admit something. Someone attacked us. Someone used our own communication systems to send us a message. And unless we respond wisely, they might think we won't defend ourselves. Another member disagreed gently. We can't rush to anger. We don't know who they are. Maybe this was a warning about something else. Or maybe, someone else said carefully, they wanted to test how we react. The room froze at those words. The idea that Earth was being studied, measured like a small creature in a vast universe, was unsettling. Humans had always believed they were prepared for interstellar challenges, but this incident showed otherwise. A younger strategist pointed at the screen where the alien ships were still displayed. If they wanted to attack Earth, they would have already done it. They chose the outpost. That means this is a message. We need to understand the message. But the question was, what kind of message? Was it a threat? A warning? A declaration? Or simply a demonstration of power? The assembly could not agree on one answer. Security experts then presented reports about Earth's readiness. Defense systems were active, ships were on alert, and observation stations were scanning every corner of the sky. Earth was preparing itself quietly. Without alarming the public. One official looked at the list and sighed, "We thought we were advanced. But now I'm not sure." Another answered, "Maybe being unsure is what will keep us alive. It makes us careful." Outside the government building, protests and gatherings were beginning. Some people demanded action. Others wanted peace. Some believed Earth should contact the alien faction immediately, while others insisted Earth stay silent and observe instead. Fear had a strange way of bringing people together while also pushing them apart. A group of scientists entered the assembly meeting, bringing new information. They had studied energy signatures visible in the broadcast. The numbers were strange, not matching anything known. Their early conclusion was simple and alarming. The alien technology was at least several generations ahead of Earth's. People in the room exchanged uneasy looks. If this faction had such advanced abilities, then humanity was dealing with a power that could not be underestimated. One leader tapped the table softly. "Then we have to be smart, not loud." The debate continued for hours. Some suggested sending exploration drones. Others suggested sending coded messages into deep space to ask for clarification. A few believed Earth should show strength by positioning fleets near the outer borders. But one opinion cut through all the noise. If we respond too softly, they will think we're weak. If we respond too aggressively, we might start something we can't control. We need balance. Something firm, but not reckless. Slowly, the room shifted toward a shared understanding. Humanity had always preferred peace, but peace had to be protected. What happened at the outpost could not be ignored or dismissed as an accident. It had to be acknowledged as something deliberate. A final vote was taken. The result was almost unanimous. The assembly declared the incident an act of war, not because they wanted conflict, but because they could not afford to pretend it didn't happen. It was the only way to protect Earth and prevent more attacks. However, they did not announce retaliation. Not yet. They chose to move carefully, gather data, study the alien faction, and prepare quietly. But the official statement was clear. Earth would not remain silent. As the decision circulated through secure channels, the leaders prepared to address the planet. They knew millions of eyes would be watching, waiting to hear something that would help them sleep again. When the message finally went out, the speaker's voice was steady. They explained what was known, what was still uncertain, and what Earth planned to do next. They promised transparency, unity, and protection. They reassured citizens that humanity would stand strong together. People around the world listened, some with tears in their eyes, others with clenched fists. The fear didn't disappear, but it softened slightly. Earth had a plan. Earth had direction again. But deep down, everyone knew something had changed forever. The peaceful dream of joining the galaxy with open hands now had a darker edge. Humanity realized it had to protect itself in a universe that might not always welcome them. And even though the assembly called it an act of war, most people didn't feel anger yet. They felt something quieter, heavier, a mixture of sadness, disbelief, and a new understanding. The galaxy was bigger and more dangerous than they thought. Earth had just taken its first step into a future where kindness alone might not be enough. The decision made by the United Earth Assembly spread quietly through secure channels, but the feeling behind it began to show everywhere, even among ordinary people. Earth had never faced something like this before, And although officials tried to stay calm in public, the atmosphere across the planet had changed. People could sense it without being told. The morning after the official statement, cities felt different. Streets were busy as usual, but there was a tension in the air that no one could describe. People walked a little faster, spoke a little softer, and kept glancing at the sky as if expecting something unusual to appear. In cafes and offices, everyone talked about the broadcast. Some tried to stay positive, saying Earth would find a peaceful solution. Others argued that whoever sent that message clearly wanted to intimidate humanity. No one truly knew what to believe. Meanwhile, deep inside Earth's defense centers, something else was happening, something the public didn't know about. Weeks before the broadcast, Earth had already been working on advanced projects. These were not secret because they were dangerous. They were secret because they were unfinished. They were experiments that world governments wanted to test quietly, hoping to unveil them only when they were completely safe. But after the outpost incident, those projects were no longer just research. They became Earth's backup plan. Inside one of these hidden facilities, scientists and engineers worked nonstop. Sleep became a luxury. People stayed at their stations for hours, staring at holographic screens filled with numbers, energy readings, and star maps. The room always hummed with machinery, and bright lights stayed on even at night. No one questioned the extra workload. They all felt the same urgency. Their goal was simple but incredibly difficult. Prepare Earth for whatever might come. In another part of the world. Military teams gathered quietly, reviewing old emergency protocols that had been stored away for years. Most of Earth's forces were designed for peacekeeping or defensive operations, not interstellar conflict. But humans were adaptable. They reviewed every ship, every system, every strategy. They practiced simulations again and again, adjusting tactics to face an enemy they didn't fully understand. Leaders around the world held private briefings. They spoke calmly, but their eyes showed the pressure they felt. Everyone knew they had to stay composed in public, but behind closed doors, even the strongest officials admitted they were worried. They wanted to avoid panic, yet they needed to prepare for the worst. During this time, something else changed, something subtle but powerful. The way people talked about peace shifted. Normally, Earth's leaders spoke proudly about cooperation, diplomacy, and patience. But now their language had edges. The softness that once shaped every speech was fading. Every sentence carried determination, resolve, and a reminder that Earth would not be pushed around. In news studios, anchors spoke with firmer voices. Analysts used words like readiness, response, and consequences. Even entertainment shows paused their usual light-hearted tone to discuss the tension growing in the world. But the public wasn't only scared, they were united. Candlelight gatherings appeared in towns. People held hands and prayed for the outpost residents, even though no one knew exactly what happened to them. Artists drew pictures of galaxies with Earth standing strong. Music creators wrote songs about standing together. For the first time in decades, humans felt deeply connected, not by choice, but by the sense that they were facing something far bigger than any one nation. Yet beneath that unity, something darker was rising. A quiet seriousness settled into people's hearts. Loss, whether confirmed or suspected, had a way of transforming emotions. The more they thought about the broadcast, the more they felt the weight of it. An outpost filled with hopeful workers, scientists, and explorers had been shown to the entire world in a damaged state. Even without clear visuals, everyone imagined the fear those people must have felt. Earth had always tried to believe the universe was filled with civilizations that wanted cooperation. But the broadcast had cracked that belief. Now people looked at the stars with caution, not excitement. They wondered who else might be watching Earth. Who else might see humans as weak newcomers in a huge galaxy. As days passed, Journalists began investigating what else Earth had prepared in case of danger. Some reporters discovered hints of unnamed defense projects. They didn't have full details, but they revealed enough to capture attention. Earth had technology, far more advanced than the public knew. People were surprised. But instead of questioning the secrecy, many felt relieved. It reassured them to know Earth had been preparing quietly. It meant their leaders weren't as unprepared as people feared. Behind the scenes, the Assembly ordered a select group of officials to begin activating Earth's most advanced fleet, a set of ships built quietly over the years. They were not weapons of destruction, but tools of protection. Their engines were powered by energy systems much stronger than older models. Their sensors could read signals from across long distances, and their communication systems were designed to bypass interference. These ships had been waiting for a moment like this, though no one expected the moment to arrive so soon. Crews were assigned quickly. They trained in full secrecy, learning how to guide the new vessels without drawing attention. Each pilot knew that if the alien faction returned, these advanced ships might be the only line of defense Earth had. But Earth wasn't preparing only in the military sector. Scientists, sociologists, and linguists came together to study the alien symbols from the broadcast. They tried everything from mathematical mapping to sound frequency modeling to understand the message behind those symbols. Some believed the symbols were a warning. Others thought they were a claim of responsibility. A few wondered if they were something else entirely, like a demand or a statement of superiority. Whatever the meaning, one thing became clear. The alien faction wanted to be understood. That meant they expected a reaction dot, and Earth was preparing one dot. The change in public attitude grew stronger each day. People no longer asked, "Why did they do this?" They began asking, "What will Earth do now?" There wasn't anger, at least not the loud kind. It was something colder, deeper. A silent promise forming inside millions of hearts. Humans were kind, patient, and hopeful, but they were also capable of drawing a firm line when pushed too far. Before the broadcast, Earth viewed itself as a peaceful participant in the galaxy. But now, humans realized they needed to defend their place. Kindness was still important, but survival came first. In classrooms, teachers explained the situation gently. Children asked innocent questions about aliens and whether Earth would be safe. Parents comforted them, even though many adults were unsure themselves. But this moment also showed a beautiful truth. Humans cared deeply about each other. No one wanted to see harm come to strangers, especially those in the outpost. Around the world, people sent messages of support to families of outpost workers. Even though communication with the outpost was silent, people didn't stop hoping. Hope remained strong, even when fear tried to overshadow it. But hope alone wasn't enough anymore. Earth had reached a point where compassion needed to stand beside strength. Humanity had always been patient, but patience could not erase what happened. Something had broken that day, the belief that every civilization wanted peace. As Earth prepared behind the scenes, something else settled quietly across the planet, a shift in identity. Humans were no longer simply explorers reaching outward with open hands. They were guardians of their own future, ready to protect their people. The Assembly knew this shift was necessary. One official summarized it best during a closed meeting. "We are still peaceful, but we are no longer unguarded." Another responded, "If the universe wants to test us, it will learn that Earth doesn't bend easily." And that was the moment Earth's mask slipped, the gentle, hopeful mask it had worn for years. Humanity didn't want war, but they were no longer afraid to defend themselves. No one said it outright, but everyone felt it. Earth had dropped the veil of mercy. The galaxy just didn't know it yet. The day Earth's fleets finally moved was not marked by any loud announcement or dramatic music. It began like any other morning. People woke up, stretched, made tea or coffee, looked outside their windows, and checked their screens. Life continued as usual. Only a small number of people, those inside Earth's command centers, knew that something huge was already unfolding far beyond the sky. Inside one of the main control rooms, the atmosphere was steady but intense. Large screens filled the walls, showing star maps, flight paths, and faint blue signals moving slowly across the void. These signals represented Earth's advanced ships, the ones activated after long years of secrecy. They were not built for aggression, but for protection. And now they were on their first real mission. The decision to send them had been difficult. The assembly did not want war. They still hoped for peace, or at least understanding. But they also knew they could not wait forever. The alien faction that attacked the outpost had sent a message, one that could not be ignored. The silence afterward made everything worse. It felt like Earth was standing in a dark room with an unseen threat somewhere nearby. So Earth made a choice. The fleets would travel into the outer territories, where the alien group was last detected. Their orders were clear and strict: protect Earth, gather information, disable threats if necessary, and avoid unnecessary harm. The goal was not destruction. The goal was clarity and safety. From the outside, the ships didn't look threatening. They were sleek, silver-colored vessels shaped like long arcs, built for speed and stability. But on the inside, they carried technology far more advanced than anything the public had ever seen. Their engines hummed softly, their surfaces glowed with faint energetic lines, and their guidance systems could map entire regions of space within seconds. As the fleets moved deeper into unknown territory, the crews stayed alert. No one spoke loudly. Every person knew the importance of their mission. Even though they weren't fighting, the silence of space itself created a strange pressure, a sense that every moment mattered. Back on Earth, the assembly waited for updates. They received short messages every few minutes, confirming the fleet's progress. Leaders stood in front of large projection walls, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the blue lights that represented the human ships. Some tapped their fingers nervously. Others tried to stay calm, reminding themselves that preparation was the only choice Earth had left. Hours passed before the first major update arrived. One of the scouts reported unusual energy readings ahead. The alien faction's presence was nearby. The room on Earth fell completely silent as everyone listened to the recording. "We have visual confirmation," the scout said. "Multiple structures detected. They appear to be stations or outposts. No signs of activity yet." People exchanged worried looks. If these structures belonged to the same group shown in the broadcast, then Earth was now stepping into territory the aliens considered their own. The assembly gave the next instruction softly but clearly: proceed, but stay cautious. As the human fleet approached the alien structures, they kept their communication channels open. They sent peaceful signals. They transmitted universal symbols representing neutrality. They waited for any kind of reply, but there was nothing, not a word, not a sound, not even a flicker of acknowledgement. That silence felt heavier than any threat. When the scouts scanned the area more closely, they found something strange. The alien structures seemed active but empty. They carried power signatures, yet there were no visible life signs. It looked as if the place had been left in a hurry or purposely abandoned. That raised even more questions. Were the aliens preparing something? Watching Earth from afar? Or was this an attempt to confuse humanity? A decision had to be made again. Finally, after long discussion, Earth's leaders sent a calm instruction: disable the structures, but in the safest and cleanest way possible. They wanted to send a message, not of destruction, but of resolve. They needed the alien faction to understand that Earth was not afraid to protect itself. The fleets acted with precision. Using controlled pulses of energy, they shut down the alien stations without causing explosions. Everything was handled carefully, almost gently. Lights on the alien buildings flickered and faded until they went completely dark. The area became silent again, but this time, the silence was controlled by Earth. For the first time, humanity had shown it would not simply watch Dot as the fleets continued forward. They detected movement, several alien ships approaching from the far edge of the region. The tension inside the command center rose. On Earth, the assembly stood perfectly still as updates came in rapidly. The alien ships slowed down near the human fleet. For a long moment, neither side moved. It felt like the whole galaxy was holding its breath. Then, unexpectedly, the alien ships sent a signal. It wasn't a peaceful greeting, nor was it a direct threat. It was more like a burst of chaotic noise, difficult to decode. Scientists on Earth began analyzing it instantly, trying to understand the meaning behind the patterns. The fleets remained still. They didn't fire. They didn't chase. They simply waited. After a few minutes, the alien ships changed course and began retreating. First slowly, then faster. They moved away from the human fleet until they disappeared into the distance. The crews released quiet sighs of relief. Earth had made its point without a single aggressive act. After the alien ships were gone, Earth sent another peaceful transmission, an open channel inviting communication. But again, there was no reply. The fleet stayed in the region for hours, scanning every corner, monitoring every signal. When the data showed no further threat, the assembly finally gave the order for the fleets to return. On the journey back, the atmosphere on the ships felt lighter, but still serious. The crews knew that what they did today was important. Earth had defended itself, but without causing harm. They had shown strength without losing their humanity. When news quietly spread around the world, people reacted with a mix of relief and pride. They didn't see explosions or dramatic battles. They didn't hear about aggression or cruelty. Instead, they learned that Earth had stood firm and confident. Humanity had proven something to itself, not just to the galaxy. People talked about the mission in cafes, schools, and workplaces. Many felt reassured. They saw that Earth could protect itself without becoming violent. They appreciated the calm strength their leaders had shown. Some even felt inspired, realizing that humanity could face the unknown without fear if it stood together. Meanwhile, the assembly reviewed all the mission data carefully. They saw the alien ships retreating. They saw the abandoned structures. They saw the silence. Everything pointed to one conclusion. The alien faction had not expected Earth to respond in this way. They had expected fear. They had expected hesitation. They had expected quiet submission. Instead, they saw a planet that moved with confidence and unity. One official summarized it softly during the final briefing. They didn't expect us to stand up. Now they know. Another added, this wasn't a war. It was a warning to them and to us. We learned what we are capable of. Back on Earth, as night fell across different regions, people looked up at the stars again. This time, their eyes didn't hold fear. They held determination. They knew the galaxy was watching. They knew not every civilization out there wished them well. But they also knew something else, something powerful. Earth would not back down. Earth would not remain silent. Earth had shown strength with restraint. And even though there were no grand victory celebrations, no massive speeches, the entire planet felt the shift. Humanity had taken a stand. The alien faction had retreated. Dot and the galaxy had witnessed a side of Earth that few had ever imagined. A side built not on rage or cruelty, but on controlled, quiet power. The message was clear. Earth was peaceful, but it would not be pushed. Earth respected others, but it expected respect in return. Dot, and for the first time in long history, humanity understood that this balanced strength with kindness. was what would protect them in a vast and unpredictable galaxy. Earth had stepped forward, steady and unshaken. The moment the human fleets returned from their mission, the mood across Earth began to shift. At first, people didn't know exactly why, but slowly, the feeling of tension that had weighed down the planet for weeks started to ease. Citizens who had been anxious, worried, and fearful now felt a quiet sense of reassurance. Humanity had proven to itself that it could face the unknown, that it could stand firm without acting recklessly, and that it could protect its people with strength guided by caution. In homes across the globe, families gathered around their screens, reading updates and watching calm reports from trusted journalists. No one celebrated in loud, dramatic ways. There were no fireworks, no parades, and no shouting. The victory was quiet, almost internal. It was the kind of victory that settles into people's hearts rather than their streets. And that made it feel more real. Schools included discussions about what had happened, but in a way that focused on human resilience rather than fear or conflict. Teachers emphasized unity, understanding, and careful decision-making. They reminded children that the world could be complicated and even dangerous, but humans were capable of facing challenges with courage and thoughtfulness. It wasn't about teaching hatred or revenge. It was about teaching responsibility, empathy, and awareness. The world had seen the cost of being unprepared, and now it was learning to balance hope with caution. Scientists and engineers worked even harder than before, analyzing every bit of data gathered by the fleets. Every signal, every trace of energy, and every observation from the mission was carefully recorded. The hope was not just to protect Earth from threats, but to understand them. Humanity wanted knowledge. Knowledge would prevent mistakes in the future and give people the confidence to continue exploring and interacting with other civilizations safely. While the government and scientific teams worked in secrecy, ordinary citizens also contributed in their own ways. Community projects sprang up across cities and towns. People built emergency plans, reinforced local infrastructures, and prepared resources that could help anyone in a crisis. They did it not out of fear, but out of care for one another. This collective effort reminded everyone that even when the universe seemed vast and unknown, humans could rely on each other for support, protection, and hope. Stories of courage began circulating quietly. Crew members who had been on the fleets spoke about what they had seen, how carefully they had moved, and the discipline that allowed them to act without panic. These stories inspired others, but they didn't encourage recklessness. Instead, they emphasized calm, focus, and humanity. People could be strong without losing compassion. They could act with precision without losing themselves to anger or fear. In the political sphere, leaders continued to communicate carefully with the public. They explained that the galaxy was vast, that not every civilization might be friendly, and that Earth would always defend itself. But they also stressed that humanity still valued peace and cooperation. This dual message, strength and care, became the new guiding principle of global leadership. Citizens appreciated the honesty and the calm approach, even when the underlying tension remained. People felt included and informed, which reduced panic and built trust. Memorials and vigils were held quietly for the residents of the outpost. Families, friends, and communities lit candles and reflected on the bravery of those who had worked so far from home. Even without knowing the full details of what had happened, Earth honored their service and sacrifices. These events were not just acts of remembrance. They were reminders of what humanity stood for: empathy, courage, and unity, even in the face of great uncertainty. Over time, the alien faction that had attacked the outpost became more cautious. From distant observation points, Earth detected fewer signals of aggression. The galaxy seemed to notice the new side of humanity, a species that was capable of great kindness, but also unwavering resolve. Earth had made its position clear without unnecessary violence. It was a demonstration that intelligence, planning, and patience could be as powerful as force. This subtle, deliberate message had lasting effects across nearby star systems. Citizens began to change too. People felt stronger, more responsible, and more aware of their place in the larger universe. They realized that humanity had limits, but also strengths that could not be underestimated. They learned that compassion was essential, but that it did not mean weakness. They began to see themselves as part of a global community that could act decisively when necessary, without losing the values that made humanity unique. Artists, writers, and storytellers reflected on the experience through their work. Songs were composed about courage, unity, and resilience. Poems described humanity's careful balance between hope and vigilance. Illustrators created images of fleets moving gracefully through the stars, shining with the quiet power of determination. This culture of reflection helped people process the events not through fear, but through creativity, inspiration, and understanding. Art became a tool to keep the memory alive and to remind people of the lessons learned. While life slowly returned to a sense of normalcy, no one forgot the silent hour or the lessons it had taught. People carried an awareness of the galaxy's possibilities. They understood that being unprepared was dangerous, but that panic was unnecessary. Knowledge, careful action, and empathy had carried Earth safely through the first real challenge of interstellar contact. It was a turning point, and people felt it deeply, even if the changes were quiet and subtle. For the leaders of Earth, the lesson was clear. Patience and wisdom were as important as strength. Every decision had to consider both short-term survival and long-term values. Acting with anger or fear would be easy, but it could harm the world far more than the external threat ever could. By choosing restraint, humanity had won not only safety, but respect from themselves, and potentially from others in the galaxy. Meanwhile, scientists continued their work in secret, preparing for any future challenge. They knew that the unknown would always exist, and that vigilance was necessary. Every signal received, every observation made, and every calculation performed helped Earth grow smarter and more capable. People understood that the galaxy was full of possibilities, some welcoming, some dangerous, and that preparation, knowledge, and unity were the only way to navigate it safely. As months passed, citizens began looking up at the stars with renewed wonder. Their fear was replaced with curiosity, admiration, and cautious hope. They saw the galaxy not as a threat to escape from, but as a place full of lessons, possibilities, and potential allies. Humanity had proven that it could act wisely under pressure. That confidence spread quietly but powerfully among people of all ages, backgrounds, and nations. And yet, people never lost the memory of the silent hour. It remained a symbol of vigilance, resilience, and the thin line between peace and danger. The broadcast, the outpost, the unknown ships, all of it became a story that humanity would tell for generations. Not as a tale of fear or revenge, but as a story of courage, careful action, and shared humanity. It reminded everyone that being strong didn't mean being cruel, and being compassionate didn't mean being weak. Humanity had learned that kindness and strength could coexist. The galaxy had seen it, Earth had lived it, and people everywhere had felt it in their hearts. The world had changed, but it had changed in a way that honored human values, intelligence, empathy, and courage. And so Earth moved forward. People continued their lives, working, learning, exploring, and dreaming. But beneath the ordinary routines, there was a quiet awareness, a strength that came not from weapons or dominance, but from unity, understanding, and thoughtful action. Humanity had dropped the veil of mercy, not to punish, but to protect. And in doing so, it had created a future where hope and vigilance could exist side by side, guiding every decision, every action, and every dream. For the first time in history, humanity looked at the stars, and knew that it could survive, thrive, and remain human even in a galaxy full of uncertainty. And that realization became the most powerful force of all. A quiet, enduring confidence that whatever came next, Earth would stand firm, compassionate, and united.